As you saw yesterday, I tried my first Qautotune in life and it didn't go very well. Such is life. You can see here how the Qautotune works. Autotunes, PIDs in the quad plane. It uses the same system as the auto-tune mode for Copter. It should allow you to improve the tune without having to manually adjust PIDs. It is not recommended to use Q auto-tune for tail sitters, pitch, or yaw axis. I'm not doing a tail sitter. Or any axis which requires feed forward PID contributions. I'm not too sure about the feed forward on all the axes of this plane. They should go into it a little deeper. But anyway, you set Q auto tune mode, one of your mode switches. It may not show up as an available mode in your ground control station. I wasn't using a ground control station. You may need to set the flight in perimeter in the full perimeter list. Select which axis you want to tune with Q auto tune axis. Boy, early on Sunday morning. So I set up, as you saw, Q auto tune on one of my switches, and I set Q auto tune for 3 axes: pitch, roll, and yaw. That was very, very ambitious to do all 3 of them. Q auto tune mode cannot be entered while disarmed, unlike many other quad plane modes, as a Q auto tune can take quite a long time. 3 to 5 minutes per axis is common. Yeah, I've done lots of quad auto tunes, hordes of them. They do take a long time. Auto-tuning airplane is much quicker. You may wish to tune one axis at a time. Choose whether you want position hold support while tuning. If you enter Q auto-tune mode from Q loiter, which I plan to do, because then it will use a loose position hold, preventing wind from carrying it away while tuning. Yeah, I wanted to do that even if I took it to one of the large fields. I just don't want to chase it around. But because the documentation said it will use a loose position hold, preventing wind from carrying it away, when we came back from Asheville yesterday and the wind seemed to be up, I didn't think out in the open field was the best place. Got a lot of room. There's almost 3 acres of unobstructed area in our front yard. If it's going to do a position hold, even though it says here a loose position hold, I thought that would be good. If you start from Q hover, then it will not hold position. So I wasn't going to do that. And you may need to reposition while tuning. So this kind of suggested there wouldn't be any repositioning needed if I started from Q loiter. So that was my plan. But we'll only do tuning, twitching to measure responses while the sticks are centered. Yeah, from all sorts of quad tunes, I understood fully that you can't touch the sticks. You may need to increase the dead zone on your input channels or recalibrate your RC channels to ensure it can start the tune. Mine were too tight. So today I'm going to increase the dead zone and we're going to try it again. Once you start the tune, it will twitch. On the axis, it is tuning. So if it is tuning roll, then it does small, sharp roll movements to measure response. Yeah, I read that, but never having done a Q auto tune, even though it told me it uses the same auto tune mode as Copter. Old brain farts. Let's be life. I didn't. It looked like it was twitching a little bit. I assume now it needs to twitch like a normal quad. So what we're going to do here is we're going to increase RC. What would that be? 1 dead zone, and we're going to try it again. And I'm going to start it in an even a smaller place in the backyard just to see if it twitches. Then I'll make my decision whether I go back to the front yard or out to one of the fields. I use the front yard because all the tall trees around it had the wind blocked off. So let's look at the other mistake I made real quick. Because I was told in the documentation it was going to pretty much stay in place with a Q hold type Qautotune. I decided to go for 3-axis and get it over with. That was a little ambitious. So I decided to use one of these batteries, which was I've got 2 of these larger ones here with 3500 milliamp hour 4S. I thought it would do the trick. I knew I couldn't push much current out of these things, and I don't think they even have a burst mode. But you can see right here the max continuous discharge for those batteries is 10 amps. I really didn't think the platform was going to pull that much. Don't have much experience with this platform. And it did kind of do 10 amps, as you saw at the start. But the laws of physics under Ohm's law kind of bit me. It might have started out around 10 and been fine, but it wasn't going to stay at 10 as the voltage went down. As the voltage goes down, more current's going to be sucked to keep everything going. So as I started it, like I say, it seemed to be drifting around and not doing a position hold, but it also wasn't going fully into Q Qautotune because of the dead zone. So in my confusion over that, I was kind of keeping it in place. And I was mistaken that lithium ion battery would do this. Going to have to try again about even getting that platform popped up for 10 seconds or less. And then switched into forward mode where the current should go way down from the 10 amps. Looks like it takes about 10 amps to pick it up. The real big problem will be after the flight, bringing it into land in Q loiter type or Q return to home type situation where the battery will be low on voltage. But it's got to, the only thing that will save me there will be the fact that because the platform is descending, it won't use as much current because of the wings being blocking the wind, kind of keeping it from having to have so much current. But there's things on this I don't really understand. Right here it says maximum continuous current of 10 amps, but right here it says constant current 1550 milliamps. To me that's 1.5 amps. Am I correct on that? Let me look real quick. I mean, that's just milliamps to amps. And that was what? 15 1850 milliamps. Yeah, see, it's 1.5. I am correct. It is 1.5. Okay, 1.55 amps. So there's conflicts again in information. That's one of the reasons I get stuck out doing these things, because even in the same documentation, it says right here, continuous discharge current of 10 amps, but this right here says, to me, constant discharge current is 1.55 amps. Total conflict. And if it's per cell, it's still not up to this 10 amps. It would have to be 2.5 milliamps. 2,500 milliamps for 2.5 amps times 4 cells to come up with 10 amps. So now, I might have studied Ohm's law 52 years ago or something like that. But I know this. In my mind, I know the physics. So, after it not doing what I wanted it to do for 10-15 seconds, I knew I needed to start watching the voltage and current on my radio. So I rolled the telemetry screen up to both mode, which on a ground control station, if you use Mission Planner, if you tell the platform to go into a mode, it will not change on Mission Planner unless it goes into that mode. So I was looking on the screen, was it staying in Q loiter, or was it actually going into Q Qautotune? Screen said it was going into Q Qautotune. That's probably just because the button was pushed. I'd have to see it on Mission Planner to say 100%. The radio was just doing that because that's what the radio is told to do when that particular button is pushed. Whereas if you have Mission Planner up and running, again, one of the reasons I love constant telemetry from a platform, Mission Planner will tell you if something doesn't actually work. And with this, it might show it in Q Qautotune, and the fact that repositioning is keeping it from actually working, like it said on the screen that I only read after I came back in. Probably need to work with the goggles more, so instead of carrying that tripod and walk snail receiver out there, I could have just carried the goggles and the platform and the radio. Much simpler. Also would have given me immediate feedback. But in that case, I would have had to take Pam with me. She was out doing some errands at that time. I was alone. So mistakes were made. In my mind knew to worry about the current and stuff, because after I saw that the radio said it was in the mode, my mind said, that's just because the radio button's pushed. So I then scrolled down to where I could see voltage and current. I did see current going up. But this 70-year-old brain didn't light up like it would have even 5 years ago, going, okay, that's a problem. Let's get it down. There was a discomforting feeling, but the brain didn't completely click over to going, well, you've got 15 amps of current there now. You're over the limit. Set it down. That's just age. Such be life. I hope you guys get to make it to 70 years old, all of you. Many of my friends, classmates, family didn't. So that's part of the mistakes that were made yesterday. And again, I'm not sure this particular battery, I think it will be fine after it goes into forward flight, that the current will come down. But again, a little worried about the landing. Don't want to pop these batteries right and left. They're like $50 a piece. I think the wind resistance from the wings coming down, even at the end of the flight, will probably keep it under 10. I suppose I should check this with a lithium polymer battery before I try it again with a lithium ion battery. But I honestly thought this battery would handle that. I didn't think it was actually going to be 10 amps. But the extra weight of the battery was different than the weight of the 1300 milliamp hour LiPo. Anyway, so today, I hope I can fly it today. We need to go in and change the dead zone in the radio and try all this again. Real quick before I do that, let's look at this. Race Day Quads, who I buy a lot of my stuff from, has these lithium-ion batteries in that same area. These are 3,000 milliamp hours rather than 3,500. But these seem to be a higher C rating. This one is exactly the 10C of the ZOHD batteries. This one says it's a 15C with a burst of 30C. You know, I don't really believe that, because it's using the same cell, 18650. It's the same cell that the ZOHD uses, and this one uses 18650. It says it's only 10C. 18650. This says 15C with a burst of 30. I don't know if I believe the burst. I sort of believe that it might be 10C and a burst of 15C. But that's one of the problems with these batteries. Every battery manufacturer in the world, whether it be lithium polymer or lithium ion, you can't really trust their data sheets. You technically really have to go out there like I did yesterday and try it. You might like it. Didn't like what happened yesterday, so it didn't work for me. But under different circumstances, it may have. My biggest mistake yesterday was just not having instantaneous telemetry letting me know what was going on. But I'm afraid to believe this right here. I really don't want to pay $60 for a battery that's not going to perform any better. 18650s, you see. Up to 30 amps of output power. I don't believe that. Max continuous discharge right here of 30 amps. That's 3 times what the ZOHD says, and it's the same cells. It's not possible. Somebody's lying here. Because I definitely would have thought this one, even if I looked down at my radio and saw 15 amps, if I was using this one, I wouldn't have thought it would be a problem at all. From now on in the future, any battery that's using 18650s, I'm going to stick more to it's got to be 10 amps or less. Now, that just kind of torques my jaw when I think stuff like this is for sales. It's not accurate. I don't think this would have worked that way. So, that's me in my rant about getting bit yesterday by this. I wonder what the difference in weight of these batteries, 201 grams. Versus let's see here. Weight 210 grams. Not much difference in the weight. For the 4S, 9 grams difference. This isn't substantially heavier than this battery here, so I really don't think there's going to be much difference. I think if I use this battery, even though it slides right here, and by the way, 10C, 15C to me on a 3,000 milliamp hour battery is 30 amps, what it says right here. I don't think you can get that out of this. I really don't. So, was a learning experience yesterday. So let's look at what I need to do on this platform to fly it again today and get a true Qautotune on it so I can kind of pull it up towards what I had hoped Mr. Piper's tuning perimeters would have done for me, but they just, I was unsuccessful working with his perimeter list. Okay, I searched the internet for increasing the dead zone. I got all sorts of answers. Let's see. Here's the first one I got to: how to set throttle dead zone. I've started tinkering. I want to increase the dead zone. The answer down here: just go into the parameters file and adjust your throttle's RC input for dead zone to how much you need. They don't tell you a single thing about how much you need. Is it 10 microseconds? Is it 5 microseconds? Is that going to be enough? That didn't help me worth a hoot. Looking in here, which was another place where it came up, it talked about the dead zones, but it didn't give me any kind of answer. This one doesn't give an answer at all either. It just tells you how to do it. That's pretty obvious how to do it. When I changed my search term from increased dead zone on RC channel input in Ardu Pilot to how much do I did get an answer. And it's in the normal copter auto tune function. And it comes down here and says, if I can find it again, here we go. Common problems: if the vehicle will not start tuning, it won't twitch. Even though it is in auto tune mode, then it's probably likely that the roll, pitch, or yaw throttle sticks are not exactly in the middle. Well, I knew this from all sorts of 11 years of doing these auto tunes. It may help to increase the dead zone on the RC input by increasing RC 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, whatever dead zone to 50 or higher. That's a bigger number than I was going to do. I was going to start with 10, but I'm going to do what they say here in their documentation. I'm going to set it to 50. So I'm going to go in on this platform, and that's under the first channel, aileron. So that's RC1. Go in here, RC1. Here's the dead zone. Look at this. I've noticed somehow, maybe this was when I did my radio calibration, it got set to 0 from the default of 30. I'll have to go look and see if that perimeter is in. I'm just going to do it right here real quick while you guys are watching. Is that in He-Wing's original parameters? Looking for RC1 underscore. That's not what I'm wanting for. Okay, look at that. Dang it. Look at that. Right there it is. The He-Wing default parameters that came in the plane out of the box sets the dead zone to 0, and that's 30 microseconds different than the default. If they hadn't have done this, I might not have gotten that much trouble yesterday. Still would have gotten trouble on the battery. I've learned you probably shouldn't use a lithium ion for tuning. Here it is again. Channel 2 dead zone changed from 30. Channel 3 from 30 to 0. Channel 4. Channel 5. Channel 6. They're setting all the dead zones to 0. I'm going to have to take another one out of the box, do a common radio calibration, and see if it stays at the default. That kind of gets me, because the default's 30. That's not far from 50. So I probably shouldn't do this, but I'm going to. I'm going to change it to 30, the default, instead of 50 that the Ardu copter documentation suggested. If it doesn't start twitching when I put it in, I'm going to change it to 50 and go with theirs. So a lot of this is trying to use other people's parameter lists. That can get me. I also need to go down to the Q functions and change my Q Qautotune axes. Q Qautotune axes. I set it to 7. Let's just do one with a LiPo battery instead. So that'll be a 1 now, and the 1 being roll. And then I'll come back and set it to a 2, which will only do pitch, and then I'll set it to a 4, which will only do yaw. I don't know about yaw D. So that's got that. I can write that out to the platform. I wrote out my dead zone, so I'm good to go. I think that's all I really need to do. One axis here, and RC 1 dead zone set to 30. RC1 dead zone 30. Okay, let's put a LiPo in it this time, and we're going to go out to the backyard, an even smaller area, but it will let me see if the platform is twitching properly or not. By the way, I ran over real quick to look at a platform I configured the parameter list on from the get-go, and on the Nazgul Evoke, if we go down and look at the dead zones, here's RC1 dead zone. It's at 20. That seems to be different than the default. Here's a 10 with a 0. So let's see what 2 is. 2 is 22. 3 is 30. So perhaps I don't see how it would do that. Some of these are not the 30. That should be the default. Anyway, 0 is certainly not. But this one looks like I've never calibrated this high in the channels. Although Ardu will do 32 channels, I really never go above 12. But that was just a tidbit I wanted to look at. So on my setups, I've got it at 20. Well, that did not work. So let's see here. RC1, we're going to change it to 50 and try it again. Okay, try it again at 50. Well, Ardu documentation says this is a Q loiter type thing. It don't loiter very well at all. You did see it twitched a couple of times at 50, so it will work at 50. But boy, I had trouble keeping it in this little area. Not trouble, but I had to move it around, and that will stop the auto tune from working. I'm just kind of upset that the Q loiter on Ardu playing quad planes doesn't seem very tight, and whatever loiter they said was in a Q auto tune, if started in Q loiter, doesn't seem much like a loiter to me. But let's look at the walk snell video. It's easier to see in that. Well, this is a little bit up in the video, but you can see here in a second it does twitch right and twitch left at 50 microsecond pulse width, but it's just not gonna be very apparent in this small area back here, because it just doesn't loiter worth a hoot. There's a twitch right and a twitch left and another one. That's all I got out of it, because I had to keep jostling the sticks around to keep it in this small area here. They're kind of lying about it's a sort of a quad loiter with this Q auto tune. So it will go in. I'm going to make them all 50 for roll, pitch, and yaw. And then I'm not sure if I'm going to go into the front yard to do this or back out to one of the big fields. One of the big fields, of course, there's no doubt whatsoever that would be best. But if it would just have its loiter type Q auto tune, it should work fine in the front yard. But so I'll have to charge up 3 batteries. I'm going to cut this video off here because it's just gotten too long, and then we'll show the actual auto tune when I do it. Ardu Pilot is the only firmware that did quad planes historically. In recent versions of iNav, they finally have it. It's kind of like iNav's had extended pulse width for RC channels for years, where Ardu just got that feature in 2023. Before, I think it's iNav 6 came out, maybe 6.1, 7's out now, you couldn't do quad planes with iNav. You can't do it with Betaflight, CleanFlight, any other firmware. And I think Ardu plane is much further down the road with quad planes than iNav is, so we're going to stick to Ardu plane for this. But I'll come back probably out in the field. We'll get this quad tune done, then we can move on to doing the auto tune in airplane mode, and then I think this platform will be fairly ready to fly. All right, guys, thank you so much.